Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. I am Kirk Henderson, and today I am joined by Mavs Moneyball regular contributors. We have David Trink, and we have one of our newest contributors, Michael Harris. Gentlemen, how are you tonight?
Doing well, Kirk. Thanks for having us.
Well, everyone who is here, including these two guys, are up past midnight Central Time as we just watched the Dallas Mavericks derp along and lose their second game of the season, 114-102. So when Michael says he's fantastic, he's actually being nice because we just watched a basketball game that felt, at least to me as a longtime fan, as much of a like mid-January doldrums game as you could possibly expect for November. David, what did you think of tonight's game?
That's actually a perfect way to put it. It felt like one of those games after some sort of break, like a long, like maybe they play a back-to-back and then they get like 3 days off and they come back and get a huge win on the second day of the back-to-back, and then they come back and it's, what are we doing? It felt like one of those games. It did not feel like the second game of the year for sure. I thought it was just bad execution. They didn't shoot very well in the beginning, and then they just couldn't recover. And at the end, it wasn't very good either.
Yeah, and you know, when we watched the first half, it felt rusty. The first half of the Spurs game, it felt rusty, and then the Mavericks came alive in the third quarter. And I think tonight I was like waiting for that moment to kick in, and it simply never really did. Maybe a brief flash to start the fourth quarter, but it was ugly, and now we're up late on a Saturday night, just trying to make sense of something that maybe hopefully we'll be able to look back on in a month and say, boy, that was an aberration. Michael, what did you think of tonight's game?
Yeah, it was wholly frustrating for me. You know, there were flashes. There were many opportunities, I thought, particularly one spot in the fourth quarter, which maybe we'll get to later in more specifics. But for me, it was just one of those kind of situations where I just kept thinking back to the preseason, you know, knowing Luka was out, not really gelling. I feel like we're doing a little bit too much of that. Spurs game, certainly the first half, like you said, of the Spurs game was a rusty kind of ugly start. And we kind of turned it on against, not so upper echelon team there. But it didn't work tonight. That was for sure. It didn't come on soon enough. Chemistry is just not quite there yet, and it's sort of frustrating to see it kind of going through preseason reps in the first couple games here.
If I'm thinking of like a group project where a bunch of people are sitting around waiting for the smart person to all of a sudden do all the work, and that just never really happened. I mean, Luka scored 40 points, and obviously he was doing his best, but I felt like his shot selection was a little bit iffy. The Mavericks sleptwalked through a significant portion of this game, and the first quarter they were up 7-2, and then the Suns kind of punched them in the mouth, and it felt like the Mavericks never woke up from that. You know, they got lucky at the end of the first quarter when Royce O'Neal tried to kill Luka on a three-point shot. And I thought that might have been a little bit of a turning point. The Mavericks finished the first quarter down 28-26. And then the Suns came out, scored 5 quick points. And the Mavericks, what was that terrible noise in my kitchen? Sorry about that. The perils of live podcasting. The Mavericks just – every time you figured they would come alive with something weird happened. I thought probably the most frustrating element of the game was the stretch at the end of the second quarter. Derek Lively picks up his third foul, and the Suns proceeded to force feed Yusuf Nurkic the ball where he scored, I want to say got fouled on 4 or 5 straight possessions, which the Mavericks, and I forgot to add that the Mavericks put in Maxi Kleber as the only center, and he just ate. That was why Nurkic ate. And when the Mavericks go into halftime down 8 points, I remember David and I were talking on our live show. We're like, okay, the Mavericks have something, you know, they played pretty poorly. Maybe they can turn it on in the third like they did yesterday. And that never happened. And I don't like – one of the things, if you guys have heard me, Michael, I don't even think I've asked you if you've listened to our podcast. One of the things I have a tendency to do is perseverate on things that don't matter. And like, I really want to be very angry at Jason Kidd for playing not Daniel Gafford, but I'm probably overstating it. Like, what did you guys think of kind of the first half? Because like we mentioned, they slept walk, but was there anything else that jumped out? Michael, I'll kick to you first.
Yeah, and echoing 2 points that you made, that one sequence at the very start of the game, we were up 7-2, and I forget the exact sequence of events, but we could have been up 10-2, and all of a sudden it was 7-7. And I know that sounds like a very minute kind of a thing. It's the NBA. You go on these runs and so on and so forth. But there's a big difference between being up 10-2, going into their home opener, smacking them in the mouth, and we just didn't do that right in that moment. The Kleba situation, Nurkic scored 12 in a row for the Suns at one point. It wasn't a 12-0 run, but it was a Suns 12-point run, which you would expect from a Kevin Durant or something like that, not Nurkic somehow channeling his inner Wilt Chamberlain. It was ridiculous. I mean, the footwork and all these moves. It was at one point, one of the announcers, I was kind of switching and heard the Suns broadcast. They said he scored more points, had more rebounds than in their first 2 games combined, which was just, a demoralizing thing to hear. So that run was obviously killer, where he ripped off 12 straight points for the Suns. But with Kleba, I was sitting there frustrated. Same with thinking about Jason Kidd not putting in Gafford. Gafford only had 1 foul. I understand Lively being out, but Kleba is going to get the blame for that, but a backup power forward playing against a starting center is not, Kleba was not in the proper position for that. You would have hoped that maybe we would have stopped the bleeding at Nurkic 6 straight points, 8 straight points, even 10 straight points, but we let him go for the full dozen there, and that was sort of frustrating to not call a timeout, make a switch there just to kind of stop that bleeding.
David, was there anything to you in the first half that like really stood out as beyond, or just to me? I kind of think that this is just Kidd doing his fairly normal, I want to see what we got thing, and the Mavericks not closing in the way that they should have.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Chuck Cooperstein, I have a post pulled up. He posted after the game. Quote, the Stars did pretty much what they were supposed to do. The role players did not. Only 21 points from those not named Luka, Kyrie, or Clay. Bad. Well, he didn't say bad, but I'm saying bad. Yeah. Meanwhile, Nurkic and Dunn came up huge for the Suns. If Dunn really has discovered how to shoot, he's going to be a huge help to Phoenix. And I agree, very bad that they only got 21 points from outside of those 3 guys. But I will disagree with that. The sentiment that they did what they're supposed to do. They didn't set the tone early.
Yeah.
You talked about this on the playback. They weren't getting to the rim, and Phoenix was, and Phoenix got a lot of calls because of it. None of them shot over 50%. Kyrie was 9 of 22. He's now 15 for 39, I think, on the year. Like, he's just not making shots. And a lot of these are like floaters, layups, like mid-range shots.
He took I lost my mind. I'm sorry to cut you off. I apologize. I lost. David got to witness me lose my mind when it was 108 to 100. And we're kind of skipping ahead to the second half. But a key like Kyrie missed shot, an example of the kind of misses that he was having all night. 108, 100. He has a drive to the rim. And for some reason, he does like a jump stop floater from about 8 feet out when all he needed to do was take another dribble. And he was challenging Nurkic, and I know he's a shorter guy. He's probably trying to get the contact early because he thought he would get the foul, and he just didn't. And just the sort of misses that the Mavericks were having were absolutely driving me crazy. Like the Suns have to play drop coverage. Nurkic is not mobile. They have to play drop. Right. So there were so many, I want to say probably like 10 to 17 footers that they baited the Mavericks into. And I don't have these numbers pulled up, but there's so many like clangs in my mind that it was just driving me nuts.
And then when Nurkic wasn't in, they like switched Iguodala onto Kyrie, and he was like, "Oh, a rookie center. Let me go one-on-one," and it was just a brick. Luka and Kyrie had the lowest plus minus on the team outside of Derek Lively, who did not play very well. They didn't set the tone. I get the Luka had 40, Kyrie had 22. It wasn't. There's a difference between scoring 40, in an assertive way and doing it. He was making shots when the Mavericks were down and it wasn't gaining any ground because he would then give up a 3 on the other end by not closing out.
Yeah. And I think there's got to be something to the notion here that everybody's still feeling each other out. All right. And I think that's fair. But, I don't remember we have to kind of assume that Luka's dictating a fair amount of the offense. We did not see a number of the things that were working on Thursday. And that's the sort of stuff that has always baffled me about not just Jason Kidd, about NBA coaches in general. Like there were no what's the play with the down screen or where Clay sets the back pick and then pops out to shoot a 3,
like a Spain.
Yeah, just kind of your multi pick and roll actions. Yeah. There just weren't enough of those things. And we were watching the team just sort of, there was a lot of ISO ball and there was a lot of they weren't tough shots because, again, these are NBA players. But at a certain point, when you're missing threes, the PJ Washington of it all is a great example. The guy had 3 corner threes that were all no one within Tarrant County of him, and he just can't hit the shot. And when you look at the 3-point action here, there you take away like Clay and Luka shot 10 of 25, 40%, absolutely outstanding. You toss in Kyrie's 2 of 5, that adds to the 40%. You got PJ Washington 1 of 5, Najee Marshall 0 of 2, Jaden Hardy 0 of 3. And it just, things got a little bleak for the Mavericks in that regard with some of the shots that they were trying to take as a team. I think that you're right, David, in that if you're looking at like a hierarchy of what frustrates me, you have what the stars didn't do. Now, through 2 games, it's cracking me up that Klay Thompson is somehow the consistent one after we're all like shitting ourselves for most of the preseason, wondering if he's alive. And again, I don't want to do the thing, I don't need to be aggregated later and say that I think Luka and Kyrie played bad. It's like there was something missing, and I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it outside of just a few bad shots that ended up costing them the game. Is that too much of an overreaction?
No. So I think a way you can like quantify that is if you look at what the Celtics are doing, they just won a championship. They know how good they are. They're beating. I mean, Detroit kept it close tonight, but first 2 games they beat down New York and the Wizards. Like they are playing with a sense of urgency that Luka and Kyrie just aren't. And both teams were in the finals a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And one more point about Kyrie, he has not had a good shooting game since Oklahoma City, like
the regular season last year.
How long is this going to go on for? He's hasn't shot over 50% in like at this point it's like months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can tell there's just something about him. I remember early last season when he was a little bit off, and he was even speaking about it in the media, saying, I just got to get my legs right, and like I'm making these little adjustments, and then he made those adjustments. And if you watch every shot he takes game after game, like we all did, you can see it. You start to see what's right for him. And these last 2 games, David, I've noticed it too. Like even just as he's going up, you're almost like, that's not going in, and it's just these weird little things that he probably just needs to tweak a little something. But yeah, he shot 40% overall tonight. He's usually doing that from the 3-point line, not from everywhere across the floor. So he put up nice numbers, but when you really kind of get into the weeds of them, there's something a little bit off about that flow and that smoothness where he's running down court, pulling up for a 3, and it's going in before he even pulls up. You feel like we haven't seen that, and going back to last season, quite a few games now.
Well, Michael's broken hand affects all of this.
Yeah,
he broke his hand over the summer, and we just kind of threw that aside, and now he's not shooting well for the first 2 games, and it's like, okay, yeah, maybe he hasn't had enough game reps to get his shooting back on track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to revisit the urgency here in a second, but we're about at the halfway point of what I want to do. So if you guys are watching for the first time, I'm sorry, because normally our shows are a little more enthusiastic because the Mavericks haven't played like butt. But here we are. Please consider subscribing to the show if you haven't. If you're listening on the audio stream, I would appreciate a subscription as well as a comment, and going ahead and leaving a review. We appreciate those sorts of things. Anybody watching on the YouTube stream later, go ahead and leave comments. I like reading those, both positive and negative. Some of the comments that we get after the fact are absolutely hilarious. I really enjoy reading those sorts of things. And again, we would be doing a secondary live show tonight, but I've asked the chat, and it's a little after midnight here in the Midwest, and it's the second game of the season, and I think that the fans of our show here don't want to get their we're all kind of trying not to overreact to the second game of the season, and maybe we'll save some of the vitriol for another day. We will have these regular post-game shows where you guys can join and get your takes off, but it doesn't really seem like there's much of an appetite for it tonight, so I'm not going to do it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here, and I'm going to insert some audio ads, and then David and Michael and I will be right back. Just top-notch production value here with me as my own producer, because there's got to be a better way to do that, but no one's told me what it is. It's probably some sort of like dynamic insertion, but I don't do it because I do it for the audio stream because I don't know how to do it in YouTube, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so I think that we have, if we're hierarchy of what frustrates us, I think we're all kind of in agreement that the Stars playing better in subtle enough ways that would help a lot. Then I think we have to pivot to everybody else, because outside of like Daniel Gafford's oomph, every single other Dallas Maverick that was on this team pissed me off in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Who should we start with? Michael, I'll punt to you.
Well, all right. I'm going to go with my buddy Jaden Hardy. In the offseason, I had gone all out and said he was my X factor, and in game one, he sort of proved that maybe he could be, and he talked about wanting to be sixth man of the year, if not this year, certainly at some point. And I certainly think that's an achievable goal for him.
Wow.
Circumstances, but tonight was not that night for sure. I mean, his stat line was deplorable. I felt bad. I'm putting together a grades piece for Mavs Moneyball, and he's not going to be happy with his grade, but looking at the stat line, it's all the little difference makers in a game, right? A guy like that comes out, clangs all four of his shots, three of them being threes, and basically pulls down a rebound. It wasn't good, man. There's just not a whole lot to say about it. You need that microwave score to at least knock down one or two of those, keep it honest, and keep the momentum kind of from going away from you. And I think close second, sort of holding hands with him, was my buddy PJ Washington. I sort of described him in the Spurs game as just sort of being quietly competent. He did everything he needed to do. He was just quietly there. This game, I felt watching it that he was just sort of quiet, but it just didn't feel right. When I checked the box score, and we alluded to it earlier, 2 for 10, 1 of 5 from 3. It was, and those corner threes, man, that's exactly what you've got to do. David, you mentioned the Celtics before, you got the Derek Whites and people like that are canning those open shots. And those are huge difference-making things with elite teams. And again, it's a small sample size, but tonight, had he hit just a couple of those, it keeps it
changes
close.
The game.
Yeah.
Changes the game. And Prince in the chat said he came here for a Kirk rant. I'm going to give you a mini Kirk rant. Okay. There's a play towards the tail end. I lost it during playback. A long rebound goes out to PJ. You remember this, David? Right wing. Long rebound goes out to PJ Washington. And Devin Booker fucking took it from him. Like, it was like a schoolyard thing where he just reaches in and takes the ball from him. And PJ, you outweigh that guy by 25 pounds, if not more. You let his little pretty boy ass take the ball from you when it was yours. I'm tired of seeing, since PJ did his standing on business motion, he's been kind of bleh.
Yeah.
And granted, I still largely believe in PJ. I was very impressed with a couple of his passes in game one. He fell down like 4 times tonight. It's like, stand on your feet, big guy. Like I watched because of my 8-year-old, I get all these like training videos for YouTube because like it's just the algorithm knows that I'm around youth basketball. And like all these different trainers talk about the importance of staying low on your dribble. Watching PJ dribble freaks me out because he's still like he's a tall guy and he dribbles high.
Yeah.
And so it's like that just results in calamity if somebody gets the ball because he's like falling over. He's trying to get the ball. So the PJ one really sticks out in my head. I do think you're Hardy. I was less mad at Hardy with the one exception for when he tried to dunk in traffic and got destroyed. Do you remember is the 1-2 point shot that he took? And right. It was like towards the end of the corner.
Yeah.
Hardy, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to be kind. Hardy is not that kind of athlete. Not in the NBA. He might be able to get some dunks, but he's just like a dunk in traffic with Kevin Durant and Yusuf Nurkic near you. Not in my lifetime.
And for his career, he's almost surprisingly inefficient at the rim, just overall.
It's hard.
Yeah, exactly. And that, and again, like you said, going against those defenders in that kind of situation, I mean, you appreciate, trying to go for the easy bucket, but it wasn't really as easy as it, might have appeared from distance. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
He was going into the trees there for sure, and it obviously didn't work out too well for him. So,
David, what did you think of the Najee Marshall minutes?
That's exactly who I was going to bring up. I mean, I was so high on this guy all summer. I thought he was going to come in and give you like 10, 4, 3 every game off the bench at least. And he's like 2 of 11 in 37 minutes, something like that. Let me check really quick.
Yep, that's correct. 2 of 11. I wrote it.
2 of 11 in 37 minutes this season. I couldn't tell you a single thing that he's done in either game that I remembered. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why we went out and got him. The Mavs bench minutes, like besides Derek Lively, obviously in game one, like what are they getting from and Jaden Hardy? But what are they getting from their bench in like the aggregate so far?
Not much.
It's not much.
Mm-mm.
And one of the things that I really thought this team was different from last year was that they were so deep. And I mean, it's 2 games. Like I still believe in Najee Marshall, and I still think Quentin Grimes is a very good player. They have given me nothing to support the claims that I think they're good. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like a rotation thing, if the kid's not rolling them out with the right lineups. I don't think it is. I just think they need to play better. They're not hitting shots. They're not making any defensive plays. And like the backup point guard stuff is weird. Like they have like Najee Marshall bringing the ball up sometimes. Like Jaden Hardy's not really a point guard. Kyrie's not really a point guard. Like, I don't know if I think Dinwiddie can run the offense better than all of them. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it's worth a try. They just can't, they don't get into their set. This was a problem last year that I really wanted them to go out and I think Dennis Smith Jr. is a better player than Spencer Dinwiddie right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he ran like he was a backup point guard for the teams that he played for like after the Mavs. So it's like when the starters play like they do, and they, Luka's going to do what he does, Kyrie's going to do what he does, they're going to take the shots that we yell at them for, regardless. You have to be able to get into your sets with the backup unit. And I think that's a very big issue that this team has so far. I don't know if it's like the biggest issue, but it is something that has stood out to me. The bench minutes have seemed like the bench players come in and you kind of black out, and then you wake up when Luka comes back in and they're down 8 points.
Yeah. No, because tonight we've seen some kind of questionable, like the final 5 minutes of the first half were very weird. Like Luka was even out during some of that and then came back in where it was a Kyrie-led group with Maxey at center. So there's been some goofy stuff going on. You expect some of these guys to shake off the funk. Marshall in particular, I just Matthew Phillips in the live stream we did essentially said that he thinks Marshall's out of shape, and I honestly don't know enough to judge that yet. But that was an interesting take because we watched the Marshall miss over Yusuf Nurkic, that play that got reversed, that foul call got reversed. It was right because like Marshall just threw it off the backboard. Like it wasn't even a good layup attempt. It was just kind of a. And so we need these guys to find a little something. And, the one Marshall make that he had last game was off of the sweet pass from Lively. I don't really want to see these guys creating for themselves right now. Can we do some more? Like a lot of the things we kept talking about during playback that was driving all of us nuts is it felt like very much to 2021-22 Dallas Mavericks basketball, where the only offensive options were Luka scoring at the rim or Luka passing out for a three. And these guys, like, we have a lot of good cutters. They need to be utilizing things in the offense more with cuts, things going towards the basket with guys getting the ball instead of always on the catch away from the basket. Small things, only 2 games. I don't know. Well, Michael, you look like you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, Najee's an interesting one to me, and the whatever it was 1 for 6 in game 1, 1 for 5 now. That's where you get your 2 for 11. Fine. His stat line just strikes me as so odd. Like when I'm watching him play, I'm loving the fact that he can bring up the ball. I think of a guy like him, when we had the Reggie Bullocks and the Dorian Finney-Smiths, all due respect to him, loved them when they were here. Those guys could not dribble. So to get a PJ Washington and a Najee Marshall who can just dribble is sort of an amazing and refreshing thing. But seeing Najee bring the ball up and really start the offense off, it was pretty much Luka and Kyrie. And that was, well, why is Luka all worn down? Why is Luka fatigued? Blah, blah, blah. All those things we heard all throughout last season. Now we've got these other guys who can do it, particularly Marshall. And Marshall had 3 assists in 15 minutes tonight, which was nice. They were sort of unassuming, but he looks smart. He looks like he belongs. He doesn't look like he's out of place. I don't feel that same thing, Kirk, that you described with PJ, where he's dribbling the ball. I just feel like I have every confidence that he's going to make the right pass or do the right thing with it. I'm just hoping that his shooting will come back to the mean and that his, whatever it was, 38% from 3 last year, which was his career high with the Pelicans. I'm hoping that wasn't the fluke, again, small sample size of 2 games. But if he can find his shot and he can find more than 15 minutes a game, I think he'll be the Najee that, all 3 of us and probably Mavs Nation thought he would be, But the shooting is just bizarre. I mean, you described one before, the layup that he literally overshot was so bizarre to me that I don't know. I can't even really describe what I was thinking when I saw it. It just seemed like such an obvious bunny, and he just somehow clanged it hard off the backboard and
killed me.
Missed the rim. That was a weird one. So hopefully he just finds his groove in that respect, because there's some positive flashes that I think I'm seeing, and I still believe, I guess, is what it comes down to, though. Start the season off better.
You absolutely got to give it 15, 20 games before issuing it. But it's when you see 2 games and it's like, oh, this is kind of where I think, we're almost at about a half hour. I think the last thing I did want to touch on before we get out of Dodge here is I did not tweet during this game, but I had 2 things to say. And each one referred back to the fact that I think the Dallas Mavericks were the reason why they lost this game. But I was absolutely disgusted by the quality of refereeing that I saw. These reviews were heinous. The fact that the Mavericks committed 11 more personal fouls than the Suns, that was a little bit horseshit. Now, the Phoenix attacked the rim more. That's kind of a give. But 11 more fouls, that was pretty bad. I mean, the only people who shot free throws for the Mavericks, Lively shot 2. Towards the later part of the game, it was better. But for the first 30 minutes of game action, the only people who shot free throws for the Mavericks were Luka Doncic and Derek Lively. And so the fact that there's the Suns shot 37 free throws, the Mavericks shot 18. Like it's a little goofy. Is all I'm gonna say.
And I'll echo you. In the first quarter, we had, I believe, 7 fouls. So you're thinking, you're in the penalty for the 5th, 6th, and 7th foul. I think the 7th one was a shooting foul regardless, but a close game, setting the tone, and you just hand them 4 free shots from the line for nothing, for stupidity, basically. And that was frustrating. That, I think, speaks a little bit to that sort of sloppiness and lack of cohesion that I still can't get over, the frustration of preseason and some of the absences there that I think we would have gelled a little bit better. And
I think so.
Maybe see a little less of that now, but I guess better late than never, we got to get on it now.
Yep.
So like the two things, one thing about like the fouls, I think that also goes back to them just not setting the Stars not setting the tone. Like Yusuf Nurkic is he's not a good defender. Like he has his flashes, but like you have to attack him when he's on the floor. That's how you beat the Suns. You get him off the floor. So that like is part of the foul thing. They didn't do that early, and then I think the refs just they rewarded the Suns for doing it on the other end. The other thing about this about like cohesion, like how much is cohesion, like lack of playing in the preseason, really an excuse? 4 out of these 5 starters just made an NBA Finals together,
right?
And Klay Thompson, he might as well be Tim Hardaway Jr. Like he's doing all the same stuff. Like it's not like they have to learn how to play with. Like it's not like Julius Randle just got traded to the team and you have to figure out how to get him 20 shots. Like the bench stuff I get. Like they have to learn how to run that second unit, like with Najee Marshall bringing the ball up or whatever the case may be. But the starters have no excuse. Like they just beat every team in the Western Conference on the way to a NBA Finals, and now they look like they did before the season started last year. Like I don't know. That's just it's disappointing to see them come out like this with such high expectations, especially considering the team opposite them in the finals is doing the,
and that's why I say it's more on the Mavericks. Like Luka gets 7 free throws in the first quarter. Obviously 3 of them were at the very end on that left, but he just kind of he I don't want to say he stopped attacking, but he was very much trying to get guys involved. And this could have been a 60-piece game for Luka because like who is he attacking at the rim? Nurkic. He could have scored all he wanted, but instead he was looking to deal a little too much and pass. I don't know. It is what it is. I think they look, maybe they look at this game tape. Hopefully maybe they throw it out. But there's just a couple instances of effort that the Mavericks really could have cleaned up that I think might have made the difference in key moments. It's a stupid loss because the Western Conference is too good.
Yeah.
No Bradley Beal.
And well, that I was just going to go there. If I've got my facts straight, the Suns played 3 games in 4 nights. We're on a back-to-back, and we're missing Beal. And we were never really, as close as we got. They kept fending us off. There was one point in the fourth quarter that was particularly frustrating. It was 96-90, and it became that sort of futility. And watching it live, as that score hit, it was sort of like, okay, this is the moment. Like I really felt that. And I pulled out just a couple of notes on it. Kyrie hit a shot to bring it to 96-90, then got a steal. We missed it. They got a rebound. They missed it. We got the rebound. We turned it over. It was this back and forth from the 9:20 mark of just futility up until like 7.5 minutes when they canned a 3. And all of a sudden, it's like you had every opportunity to, potentially bring it to a tie, bring it to a lead, at least get it a little closer. All of a sudden, it was a 9-point lead. We miss, boom, another 3. It was like we miss, boom, another 3. It was like, or actually, I think it was a 2 at that point. So they went on a 6-0 run, and all of a sudden we're up 12 or 14 or something like that when you had it. And all of a sudden now there's 6 minutes left in the game. And it was just like another one of those things in the game where it's like the team that's on 3 and 4 nights on a back-to-back without one of their starting star players shouldn't be the one that's pulling off that run at the end of a game. You know what I mean? That's when they should be tired of missing shots. And we had our opportunity to close at that mark. And it obviously went the other way. And that was sort of a frustrating moment because I could feel it from the couch that this is the time. And it went completely the opposite way that I think it very easily could have.
Well, David, you got any closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, all is not bad. They have a back-to-back Monday, Tuesday where they play Utah, it should be a huge opportunity to make a statement.
Yeah.
And then they play Minnesota in Minnesota, which should be, a good game for many reasons.
A Styles makes fights game. I'm looking forward to that one.
That's a huge opportunity to bounce back from this.
No.
It should be 3-1. The Mavs have historically played Minnesota very well.
Well,
but yeah, it was disappointing tonight, to say the least.
Yeah.
But it's game 2. So
I'm sorry you guys had to come on after a loss. We will have you guys on. I like having more than just Josh and I doing this, just because it gives he and I a break, and it's always nice to talk with new people. Those of you who are listening on the live stream and on the video later and on the podcast, please head over to Mavs Moneyball and check out David and Michael's work. Michael, on his first recap or his first game night of the season, stayed up and wrote 20 bajillion words on game 1 because he was very excited as the Mavericks won. And we just had some great stuff after the Spurs game. I very much recommend people go over if they want to be put in a good mood and go watch that or go read that work. David's been doing a lot of our gambling coverage, and what we're reminded is that early NBA games are a lot harder to bet on than you would think, particularly with Luka assist overs. My God. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back. You're right. Monday, Tuesday. Not sure what all we have coming down the pipe because I don't want our staff to get too tired because it is a long season. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see everyone on Monday night. Go Mavs.